كيف ينجو الإعلام من فخ الأخبار المضللة؟ السادة الكرام، هذا هو عنوان الجلسة القادمة والتي يديرها الأستاذة نايلة تويني، الرئيس التنفيذي لمجموعة النهار الإعلامية. يشاركها هذا الحوار السيد كارين إليوت هاوس، مراسل ومحرر وناشر في صحيفة وول ستريت جنرال سابقاً، كما يشاركها الحوار السيد توني غالاغر، رئيس تحرير صحيفة تايمز، كما يشاركها الحوار السيد أندرو هوسكن، صحفي ومراسل سابق في BBC News. How can the media escape the trap of misinformation? That's going to be the title of the next session, moderated by Ms. Nayla Tueni, the CEO of An-Nahar Media Group. Will join her Mr. Karen Elliott Howes, former reporter, editor, and publisher at the Wall Street Journal. Mr. Tony Gallagher, editor-in-chief of the Times, and Mr. Andrew Hoskin, journalist and former reporter for BBC News. Welcome to the stage.
مرحبا. الجلسة رح تكون بالإنجليزي، رح يكون أكيد في بعدين أسئلة من الجمهور، وإن كان بالعربي أو بالإنجليزي وفي ترجم. أنا نايلة تويني، مدير عام رئيسة مجلس إدارة النهار اللبنانية. برحب بالحضور الكريم. Good afternoon and welcome. Mrs. Karen Elliott House, former reporter, editor, and publisher at the Wall Street Journal. Tony Gallagher, editor-in-chief of the Times. Andrew Hoskin, journalist and former reporter and correspondent for BBC News. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
We live in a time where information travels faster than ever, but trust is becoming harder to build. Misinformation today is not only about what is false, but also about speed, pressure, algorithm, and how news is consumed and shared, especially on social media. For media organizations, this raises fundamental questions about responsibility, credibility, and the role of journalism in the age of artificial intelligence. To explore these challenges, I'm pleased to be joined by you. My first question, Mrs. Elliott, when we talk about misinformation today, are we mainly facing a problem of false content or a problem on how news is produced under pressure? And this is what you were talking about. So is just the fast being fast, to have the news, the push notification and our news to be so fast, or no, we need to really fact check our news?
I'm sorry, I had trouble hearing you. Excuse me, can you?
Okay, we're talking about fact-checking and the fake news. So nowadays, and what's happening in the media and the role of media, we're talking about being fast, or we need to fact-check before pushing the notification and the news on our platforms. So if we are in a newsroom, how can what we have to do as a journalist?
My feeling is that there is too little focus on factual news gathering, that it's all about speed or what I think, what he thinks, what you think. And frankly, my dear, as they said in the movie Gone with the Wind, I don't give a damn what you think. You know, people want to know what's real, what, you know, not my opinion or any of our opinions, but fact gathering, to seek truth from facts. And if people would get back to that, I think as an earlier panel discussed this morning, there would be more credibility among the news media, whether it's legacy media like the Wall Street Journal, you know, or the Daily Telegraph or any other, you know, that we need to focus on rebuilding the credibility of journalism.
So what do you say to all the new generation What's your advice to the new generation and to the new generation of journalists? Your advice.
Your advice to the new generation of journalists.
To focus on facts. You know, I mean, I don't know what journalists are being taught out here, but I know that at home, you know, it's more about attention gathering and, you know, getting attention for yourself or getting hits on your own personal social media or something. And, you know, I was lucky. I'm the oldest person on this stage. I was lucky to be alive when journalism was of high quality in the 70s, 80s, 90s. And then, you know, basically, I guess, after digital media came along and it was easier for everyone to spew their views, the credibility of media went down, and as media owners had to try harder to make money, you know, it's all kind of gone lower and lower.
Between the new media, new digital media, and what you were saying about the 1980s, 1990s, and the 2000s, what's the difference? And what we have to do, and how do we proceed? And especially that also we are facing the content creators, and this is very important. They have a big role, but at the same time, who do we have to trust?
I'm not sure that our priorities have changed very much from the 90s until now. We obviously focus a great deal more on breaking news, and we have to do things with more rapidity because the digital audience for us is now just as important, if not more important, than the printed audience. But we still have accuracy as a priority, number one, number two, and number three. The challenge we have now is that because there is so much more misinformation out there, we have to ensure that we are tuning out and screening out the bad actors. At my company, the Times of London, we use a company called Storyful, which helps verify an awful lot of the videos that we're now using in real-time news gathering, because otherwise it's very easy to make a mistake. We've ensured a lot of training, which is now mandatory for journalists, particularly in the era of AI, so they're not falling prey to the hallucinations or, frankly, just shameful falsehoods of AI. But as ever, it comes down to human intelligence and common sense judgment. And what you want is your reporters to always think not just what AI is telling them, not just what they've learned on a website, but can they verify it for themselves? Because accuracy and our integrity is the single most important thing we have. And once lost, it's really hard to get it back. No journalist in my organization is chasing clicks or chasing numbers or is incentivized to ensure that their efforts are very popular. They're incentivized to ensure that they're accurate and correct above all else.
This is so right. Human first, human last, as he was saying. And with that, we have also all what's happening and how to tell people to make sure before sharing any news, before sharing it on WhatsApp, on the groups, and believing, because nowadays what we face is that people directly, they trust and they read the news, they read it, do you know this is what's happening? Did you see this news? And they trust and they just forward and they spread the fake news. So.
Yeah, I'm a great believer in UAI, which is artificial intelligence. I think that the skills and experience of a reporter, of a journalist, are still very, very important. So despite the fact that AI is this nice, big, shiny thing for media companies, it comes with massive, also disadvantages with the advantages. Right? I mean, as a reporter, as editors, as journalists, being lied to is what you deal with every single day. Misinformation, disinformation, which is obviously the malevolent version of misinformation, is something that every reporter, every editor has to handle every single day. The thing that makes it different now is the new media, the social media, the digital media.
The speed.
And the speed, but also the reliability of it. If you talk to any of the geeks who understand artificial intelligence, I mean, the clue is in the title. It's artificial intelligence. And it is based on the internet. And the internet's a fantastic thing, and my goodness me, it's a wonderful aid for journalism. So I'm not what we call in England a Luddite. The Luddites were weavers from the 18th century who smashed up the new machines that took their jobs. So I'm not a Luddite. I'm very excited by the new technology, by AI, but the elephant in the room, to use a hackneyed old saying, is the fact that the internet's quality is deteriorating. And so the AI will deteriorate with it. And the other aspect, which I don't think people are fully appreciative of, is the fact that these companies, I think they call them LLMs, the large language models like GPT, who basically harvest stuff off the internet, getting this content free, frankly, scavenging the internet. I mean, they're not inventing it themselves. They're scavenging it off other people's content, journalist content, authors, musicians as well, are also complaining about this. And what there seems to be a lack of, and in the UK, they're looking at legislation and regulation to protect the original content producers from this ravenous beast, which is AI and the internet. So all of that feeds into the misinformation and disinformation, because along with all the great stuff on the internet, there's a load of toxic rubbish as well, a bit like our oceans. You know, there's lots of beautiful fish, but there's also lots of pollution. And I don't know how you address that. And I think it's a great challenge for editors such as Tony, who are sort of traditional style reporters, to have to handle that. And you need wise old heads in the newsroom. Of course, you need to bring on new people and train them up. Training is essential, experience is essential, but also having people, technical people, who are able to weed out the rubbish.
Okay, with all the experience that you have, the big experience, all of you that you have, okay, today, if we want to say what happened with you before, for example, for you, 30 years of experience,
yes,
how it changed and how it transformed, and journalism was something very important. It's a real power, and since all the old days.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, I started on local papers, and I learned shorthand. In fact, I had a typewriter, you know, and of course, you went from typewriters to the internet. The digital age changed everything. It really did. I mean, the other problem with AI is it's landing on a media landscape that's already been gutted by social media, which took away a lot of advertising away from particularly the local media, local press, and national titles as well. And the money just went to Twitter and Facebook and all the rest of it. And it's a tragedy now to look at some of these great titles of the past, like the Evening Standard, and there's no one working for them. They're just a sort of a website, right? And
the big message you have as editor-in-chief of Times. So what's the message today? And the struggle, and how to go back to the reality and say that, no, the real media, the media company, they have a big role in our societies. Okay, we all are present on the social media. We all need the social media, but at the same time, the media will not, the social media will not take the role of the trusted media. This is very important.
The thing to say, I think, is that misinformation is not a new phenomenon. If you go and look at the ruins of Pompeii, you will find scrawled on the wall gossip and foul information about leading figures in then Italian society. If you look at the British media in the 20th century, a fake letter supposedly from the Communist Party led to a different party winning an election in 2024. The CIA in the 1950s was involved in the media business. The Russians suborned journalists in the 70s and the 1980s. The difference now is that you have social networks, and they are vast networks with international relevance that travel at lightning speed. To give you an example, the biggest news source in the United Kingdom is the BBC. But after that, the biggest news sources are Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, X. They're the big ones. And those, most of them now, have no fact-checking of any kind. They've abandoned fact-checking in the cause of free speech. And what you get as a result of that is inaccuracy proliferating and anger proliferating. I'll give you two examples, which is the Rohingya massacre, which was promulgated on Facebook because there was false information being spread about the Rohingya people. The riots that we had in my own country in 2024 were greatly fueled by viral networks and lies going round at vast speed. And the reason for that is that the social media networks, unlike the old Pompeii gossips, they are fueled by anger. We published recently the algorithm that Twitter uses in order to gauge reactions. And it's really interesting because it proves definitively that the social networks are using anger to stoke their popularity. So if you like something, Twitter has every post is gauged for 15 reactions. If you like something, that's worth half a point. If you reply to a post, that's worth 13 points. But if the author replies, that's 75 points. In other words, an author arguing with everybody else is worth 150 times what a like is. And it's no wonder, therefore, that you lead to arguments, disinformation, misinformation, and the toxic spread of fake news.
Yeah, but today we're facing influencers. We have influencers, content creators, and the journalists and media. So with the world flooded with news, what to say to people today?
I didn't hear. I'm sorry.
Yeah, can you help me?
Talking about influencers and
Yeah.
their spread and how
And
you
the
combat
content
them.
creators.
How do you combat it?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not responsible for anything at the Wall Street Journal. I'm retired. But it seems to me that, again, the best way, I'm not sure why one gets involved in arguments with social media. They're out there, and people listen to them. And, you know, your stuff about how much more important it is to argue on social media in terms of the points you get. But it seems to me our job as newspaper people is to keep your own reporters focused on, you know, covering whatever you choose to cover from a accurate, as you said, journalism, and hope that you can build your brand so that people actually trust you and not all the garbage on social media. Because if you start being driven by social media, it seems to me you're driven off the road that you need to stay on.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not arguing, are you? That
Not at all. I think in one way, what Facebook and Twitter have done over the past 12 months is a real bonus for us. They're not checking anything anymore. You come to a website like The Times or to buy a newspaper like The Times, you've got to go to a newsstand and buy it, or you've got to buy a subscription, 150 Saudi riyals a month. It's not cheap. Accuracy has to be first and foremost the thing that you want above all else. Accuracy. The thing where I think we've probably failed, and we should probably do a better job of this, is we should explain to our audience how hard it is to get some of this information.
Yes, please, can we explain to the audience?
How hard it is to get what?
How hard it is to get some of the stories. We should explain our working out. Influencers can say anything and be gone again. Whereas we have investigations. We investigated a celebrity in the UK by the name of Russell Brand. It was an investigation that lasted 4 years.
But can you explain and focus on this point? Because especially in this region, in the Arab world, the whole Arab world, we're facing this because they say, why to pay to read? Why to subscribe to a media platform when we can read everywhere else? So this is the main point here in the Arab region. So can you explain how hard it is to work and to do the investigation and the reporting, and when you have editorialists, when you have opinion writers, when you're covering all of this, it needs a staff, respectful journalists, and it's not just like that. We're not just posting and taking a photo and that's it.
I couldn't disagree more. I just highlighted for you the investigation we did into Russell Brand, which went on for 4 years. We have a dedicated investigations team. I'm lucky if they're able to produce 3 or 4 stories in the course of a year. So detailed and so long-lasting is their work. And you can't get that kind of stuff from any old website, any old influencer. What we have is a network of journalists who build up contacts. We've got reporters who are working in Syria, in Ukraine. Influencers aren't in Syria and Ukraine. You need people who are on the ground. And if you're a publication like mine with a long heritage, you've got a reputation for accuracy. And as I say, you cannot throw all of that away. But that stuff is expensive. And it does cost to do all of that. And it does take time. And that's where I think we probably need to show our working out a little bit more, how we came to get these stories. And artificial intelligence, or indeed influencers, can't beat a reporter on the ground in Ukraine or a reporter on the ground in the depths of Gaza. And it's why I'm confident we have a successful future.
And
because
for enterprise journalism.
It's what I call enterprise journalism. You know, if you want basic facts, they're out there. But if you want in-depth reporting and you want commentary and analysis, you have to expect to pay for that in the modern world. Yeah. It doesn't come cheap to make it.
I absolutely agree. I mean, I work for the BBC. We're funded by the licence fee, which is about £5 billion a year. So it's people paying. It's a compulsory tax in a way. But nevertheless, it means that people get good quality journalism. And as Tony says, I mean, I reported from Ukraine in 2014. In February, following the fall of the Yanukovych regime, and I was in Donetsk and Kharkiv, and at home they were getting all kinds of fantastic stories about Russian separatists, where I was, it was quite obvious they were Russians, you know. And the first thing that they would do going into a town they occupied was to go to the television station, swivel the satellite from Kiev to Moscow. So first-hand reporting, on-the-line reporting was absolutely essential, and talking to people actually there. And for a reporter to try and make sense of the world for people back home, no matter what's being said on the social media, because increasingly social media is being monopolized by these chatbots who are being created by, not rather than who are being created by Russia and other hostile states, right, to spin lies. And as Tony says, you know, there's nothing new about misinformation or disinformation at all. As I said, you know, being lied to is all part of, and sifting that out is all part of journalism. So I think people are prepared to pay for it. And if you look at the sort of podcasts and things that people are listening to and watching increasingly on YouTube, they are prepared to pay for it. People like stories. They like in-depth stories. And I know the reporter, you know, who did the Russell Brand investigation, a fantastic piece of journalism, and really people want to read it. They really do. So there is a hunger out there. You get what you pay for at the end of the day, and information, good quality news is no different from a car in a way in terms of quality, or a washing machine. I mean, why would you want to sell something that's rubbish, right? You're going to lose trust in your product if you want to look at it as a product, which increasingly some people do, unfortunately. It's, you know, it's something that if you want to maintain trust, you have to tell people the truth about their world in the face of all this disinformation and misinformation, and hope they'll stick with you and believe in your journalism and invest in your journalism. You know, whatever I really would urge everyone in this room, if you're running a media company, to stick with your reporters and journalists, because you'll need them. You can't just do it with AI or social media. That way just leads to disaster, and no one will trust you, and then you'll have nothing.
Being the publisher of the Wall Street Journal before, so your experience, the whole experience about media, we heard their experience and what they did and what they are doing and where are we heading. So I want to listen to your experience, because everyone here wants to listen to the experience you had about responsible journalism. And you were telling me about the fast news and everything.
Well, the Wall Street Journal makes a big distinction between its opinion pages and its news pages.
Sure.
The people who write the opinions have nothing to do with news, and the news people have nothing to do with the opinion, and indeed they look down on each other. It's fair to say there's friendly distaste, but as publisher, that's where they do come together. You know, but I did not try as publisher to deal with the editorial pages, editorials day after day. I mean, it's a long set thing of free markets, free people as the fundamental underpinning for editorials. The news people I obviously paid more attention to, having been a reporter, and, you know, doing what he said, investing in journalism costs a lot of money, and for each reporter it costs a lot of time. You know, you don't just show up here and say, I want to see so-and-so. I mean, you have to invest in making sources, getting to know things. You know, so, I mean, that was my job, to try to encourage people. Don't do what everyone else is doing.
Give something different.
Find some kind of enterprise journalism that brings distinction to the paper and extra knowledge to the reader, because you're not doing what they can read on Reuters and you know, wherever else. And Reuters breaks a lot of news, so I'm a Reuters reader, but, you know, they do less of the deep enterprise journalism, and that's what I found satisfactory to do as a journalist, and important to encourage others to do when I had the opportunity to.
Social media has lowered the barrier to entry in terms of the media, and it's very easy now to be a pundit full-time, but not all social media is the same. And people scrutinizing their media should recognize that influencers are very often paid for what they do. They're very often bogus. We've had some wonderful but notorious examples in the UK recently, where during the recent revolt in Iran, the Iranians essentially cut off the internet. And miraculously, around the same time in the United Kingdom, some very active accounts which were promoting the cause of Scottish independence went completely quiet. A second study recently showed that an awful lot of the accounts that purport to be MAGA accounts are being run out of either Africa or the Middle East. They're nothing to do with the United States. There is no substitute for established, accurate information, and not all influence and not all media is the same. We need to cleave to that at all costs, because without established media, you have a sewer, and then it's over.
Okay. Young generation are exposed to a lot of news. Okay, they have everything, they are exposed. How to let them question each information or news or content, and how to verify? We have to, I will not say teach them, how to guide them to verify and to question themselves before forwarding or before trusting a news or whatever they see as a content.
I think you raise a really important point about media education, and our young people raised on a diet of 24/7 access to limitless forms of information are going to need much more about who they can trust. And you hope that they will find that out amongst themselves already. Certainly the young people I see can work out what's fake, what's true. And you hope that over time they're going to develop the critical intelligence that they bring to academic subjects, they're going to have to bring to the media, or else it's going to be very bad for democracy if they can't trust accurate information. Now, I think there are some people out there, some influence out there, that want you to believe that nothing is true, and especially nothing in the MSM is true. But if it wasn't for the mainstream media, you wouldn't be finding out half of the stuff that's there. That's all they do for a living, and they depend not just on goodwill, but on people paying for it. And you're only going to pay for information that you can trust. And I don't think it's a lost cause. Young people are probably, in many ways, better informed than any of the older people that might be attending this conference. They've got access to many wider sources of information. They're much better informed about global affairs. What we need to show to them, though, is what it's worth paying for, and what truly matters, and what's just nonsense.
When you receive a new journalist, from the new generation, so what you tell them, how to start. They have to follow the old way or no, how to transform. So whenever you have now new journalists on board, the transformation, this is a very important point. Do we still continue on writing like we used to write 20 years ago and 10 years ago, or no? The journalists, they have to transform and to listen to the new generation and to the new readers and viewers and try to give them a different content, but to keep the trust, the verification, the content, the deep content, the investigation, but in different formats. So how to transform and giving them the how, the what, everything.
The younger reporters, you want them to have a social media profile. You want them to be active on the networks. But the basis on which you're hiring them is exactly the same as it was for reporters 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. Accuracy is the priority, number one. Number two. Number three, get good sources. Be curious. Be sure of your facts. Get double sources. Ensure that you're writing the story, that everybody's had the right to reply. Those fundamental tenets of journalism haven't changed, even as we've raced towards a digital future.
Can I ask Cam, why are you so sure that young people are better educated, or whatever you said, if they're getting mostly their news off of social media?
It's not so much that they're educated, I think, as that they are better informed about world affairs because they are seeing so much more media now. They've got an understanding and a point of view about conflicts that are very, very far away from them and issues that are very, very far removed from their immediate circle. And I think that's really healthy. We can't put that genie back in the bottle. I just think you need to educate them about what it is that matters. If you look at the conflict, the recent Black Lives Matter issue in the United States, that had for right or wrong, that had a huge resonance in countries like the United Kingdom and parts of Europe, because young people were informed about that matter in a way that they never would have been before. If you look at over the past couple of weeks, young people are far more engaged in what went on in Minneapolis than people of our age would have been because of what they're seeing on social media. I'm not saying they're right or wrong or educated, but they've definitely got a world panorama that older people here didn't have.
Yeah, that's true.
When do you receive a message on your WhatsApp or any platform, a video or a photo or a news, how do you fact check?
Well, I look at who the source is, first of all. Where is it coming from, which everyone should do with every story they read. Even if when you read a story in the Times, I mean, I will look through it, I can trust it, but I want to know where it's come from. And I advise everyone to do that, whatever story it is. And if it's not clear where it's come from, then don't trust it, would be my advice.
And especially that sometimes now they play. If it's not a link from the Times or from the pages of the Times or any platform, sometimes they also play with the title and they put, for example, source, the Times source, the BBC source.
Yeah, I mean, I trust certain reporters, I trust certain newspapers more than others, but I look at the sources, the way it's been written, what weight they're placing on the evidence. I mean, the stories are as strong as the evidence that supports them, and when I wrote a story or a program, I would always ask myself, what is the story? How can I sum it up in 2 paragraphs? And then what do I need to tell that story? And so it is all about trust and about experience. And I agree with Tony. I think there is young people, my own son is much more interested in the world than I was at his age, and they've got plenty of sources. A lot of them are bad sources. A lot of them are trying to tell them lies, trying to mislead them. But there's also some very good stuff out there as well. But my worry is about the future with AI and so on, that too many media companies will be looking to replace good old-fashioned journalism. Well, it's just good journalism. I mean, you can call it old-fashioned. I mean, an editor of mine once called me a good old-fashioned reporter, and I took that as a compliment. Others of the office didn't. They thought
in my view, there's nothing old-fashioned about cultivating a contact and finding information, say at the House of Commons in London, which AI or a bot can't find, and publishing all of that. That's nothing. That's just reporting with integrity. Exactly. During the recent Iranian revolt, we received quite a number of videos which we looked at. Some of them were 6 months old, had no relationship whatsoever. No relationship whatsoever to what was happening on the ground in Iran. And it's up to us to verify them and ensure we're not putting wrong information into the public domain. I suppose what we have to accept now is that there are far many more bad actors out there wishing to spread that information. And therefore, the challenge of ensuring that you've got accurate information at the first time of asking is even greater than it was in the past.
Okay. We'll see. Any question? أي سؤال؟ في مايكروفون. فيك قريب بزعجك؟
تفضل استاذي. استاذ.
اجى الميكروفون.
تفضل.
اهلا.
Does the media have a responsibility to correct misleading news after publication? And should there be communication between the press and the government to make sure of the press?
Absolutely.
This is the fact check.
Yeah, I mean, everyone makes mistakes, and I look at some of the mistakes during my time at the BBC, and when the BBC makes a mistake, boy, do we make massive mistakes journalistically. I mean, one looks at the recent mistake over the juxtaposition of two bits of Trump, which was a mistake that was quite a human mistake. I can think of other mistakes that we made in the past that were made, and if we'd apologized at the time, it's like anything, it's like human relations. The sooner you apologize for a mistake, the better. And we all make mistakes, and I think people understand that no one is perfect. Doctors make mistakes, dentists make mistakes, chemists make, everyone makes mistakes, and journalists do. And journalists, of course, their mistakes are there for everyone to see. So, yes, the sooner you do, there's nothing wrong with that. And particularly if you're facing a defamation action as a result of your mistake, the courts look much more kindly on you if you fess up, as we say, confess as soon as possible.
In the United Kingdom, we have something called the Independent Press Standards Organisation, and you can complain to that. Unfortunately, we get occasional vexatious complaints from people, which take a long time to see off, and we don't have to publish any kind of a correction. But we strive very hard to avoid an adverse ruling from IPSO because they're embarrassing for your reputation if you've got something wrong. And we'll do all in our power to correct something before that happens, because people are very grateful if you correct something really quickly. If you take an awful long time to correct something and you fight the complainant tooth and nail, you just engender bitterness. And I think your readers really appreciate it, recognizing that you've made a mistake, if you've apologized for it quickly, and you can then move on. The other thing I would say, though, is that in the UK also we have what's known as strategic lawsuits now, and this is very wealthy, very powerful individuals will issue lawsuits in an attempt to silence the media, and at the moment the media organizations don't really have sufficient protection from those. You'll find very wealthy individuals looking for injunctions which will prevent you from publishing anything. And I'm afraid at the moment in the UK, the legal system is weighted on the side of money rather on the side of the media.
That was one of the jobs of the publisher at the journal is, to receive and truly listen
democratizing influence, and it's much harder to hide the truth from an audience that's digitally engaged. There is a reason that the authorities in Iran turned off the internet 2 weeks ago. They didn't want their population to be engaged, and I think that would probably be a great assistance to that democratization would be a great assistance to the media in Saudi Arabia.
I think this is about my 4th or 5th time to Saudi Arabia in the last 5 or 6 years, and I just noticed sort of walking around the changes that you see in society. And I think it's reflected in the English Saudi media that I get to read. I read the Conservative Middle East Council Daily Update sends a compendium of news from the region, and it includes Saudi English language press. And I find it very open. It's reporting on the region. You live in a difficult neighborhood here. All kinds of things are going on. I think you have to have, as a result, a population that is across what's going on in Jordan or Gaza and all these other places. Because it's a necessity, right, for your people here. Again, I suspect that social media has had a big impact on that. It's very difficult to close it down or limit what people can see. And your own government, you're not a democracy, obviously, a liberal democracy, but nevertheless, you'll be cognizant of the fact that your young people will be you've got a very young population in Saudi Arabia. I mean, the percentage is incredible. I forget what it is who are under 30, but it's a lot of people. So they'll be open to the YouTube and all the rest of it. So yes, but as I say, I notice less of the court circular stuff, which I'm sure is of interest as well, but you know, it's not as prioritized perhaps as it used to be in that way. But yeah, I think some of it's great, very informative.
We're out of time, but I think there are. Can we take the questions or? Oof.
Yes, hello, Riyad Najm. I worked with media regulations for quite some time in the past, and I would like to know the point of view of the panel. Do you think the social media platforms are regulated enough? Or if they are not regulated, because most of the misinformation we get in the world is coming from the social media platforms. So if they're not regulated enough, how could that happen? And could that happen on a global level or a regional or country level?
Can we take the other question and we answer at the end?
Do you want me to answer that?
No, I will just take the question and we answer. Just can you...
No, I remember it's a very good question, which I've given a lot of thought to over the years. So.
You are welcome in the Saudi Arabia. أستاذة نايلة تتكلم العربي؟
أهلا، تفضل.
نعم، أريد أن أتحدث بالعربي لو سمحتم. نشاركك مستر أندرو الرأي في المخاوف من الذكاء الاصطناعي، لكنه إلى أي مدى هذه المخاوف ترونها؟ مستر توني also you mentioned أنت ذكرت التفريق بين المقال والخبر. هل فعلا لديكم فقد المقال أو انسحب البساط منه مثل ما حصل في الموضوع الخبري؟ وألاحظ أستاذ توني أنك تذكر منصة إكس باسمها السابق تويتر، وقد يغضب منا مالك المنصة مداعبة. شكرا.
He is asking you because you were talking about the AI and the danger of AI, and he's saying that until which, for you, the danger of AI, it will reach to where?
So I don't quite understand.
Okay, he shares with you the danger, what you were saying about the un-AI.
Oh, yes.
And so, but till which, you know, how to say it?
Which version of AI?
Yes.
What, do I use Gemini or GPT or ChatGPT? I've got accounts of both, so I use both, and I trust them equally the same. So they're very good sources, and actually Google, which runs Gemini, is I think, going to become more reliable because it's also got verification tools, so you can check where photographs have come from, where texts have come from, and all the rest of it. So that, if that answers your question. The first question, I think, is an excellent point. Does it need regulating? If you want, yes, I think it does. Who regulates it? Well, it's very difficult to see how something international can be regulated by anything other than some kind of international body. But you know, I don't know whether it's a sort of a digital UN or whatever. But I think eventually people will come to the realization that something like that will be necessary, because I think the internet and AI will become so compromised, and people will be more and more concerned about the source and quality of their news, that there will be a demand for something like that.
I mean, I'll answer the last question first, really, about AI and its dangers. I'm a big fan of ChatGPT. My company has a licensing arrangement with ChatGPT. But do I use ChatGPT for news? No. Did I use it to give me some recommendations before I came to Saudi Arabia? Yes, and I would trust it for that. But I think there's some merit in us being able to say to our readers that we're essentially a handmade product. We're a human-driven product. Yes, we'll use AI to guide our decisions, but anything that we do in terms of what we're publishing or printing in a paper is always checked by a human. We're never allowing anything to be in the paper that's robotic. And to answer the second question about social media regulation, well, bluntly, they're not regulated at all at the moment. They don't see themselves as publishers. They see themselves as platforms. They're just vehicles for what everybody else can say, and as a result, they're quite lawless. They're quite out of control. I'm not sure whether we're going to get international regulation, but they're already, I think, in many ways discrediting themselves with especially young people, which is why a number of countries are now introducing prohibitions on social media websites for children under the age of 16, because I think it is beyond dispute that the mental health of very young people is being damaged by exposure to some of these social media websites.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.